In today's video, you're going to learn how to build a more qualified cash buyers list so you can sell your deals faster for higher profits. Hey, it's Josh Harris here with REI Black Book, and in today's video, we have a segment from a workshop that we did previously this year with a real estate investor right here in St. Louis, Missouri. Rob Hyder runs one of the largest wholesaling operations in the Midwest, and this year alone, they're going to close over 400 wholesale deals. And they're able to do that because they have a streamlined disposition system. They have a streamlined way of taking a property from being under contract, getting it out to their buyers list, and making sure that they have qualified buyers lined up, ready and willing to pay top dollar for their wholesale properties. So Rob came to us a few years ago when he was really looking to ramp up his wholesaling business, and we helped him build out his systems inside of REI Black Book. And in this video, he talks about the benefits that his business has gotten from really focusing on the disposition side of their business. It's completely cleared up this logjam that they had, and it's allowed them to double and then triple the amount of deals that they're able to sell simply because they have a streamlined process for selling their properties. Now, I know you might be watching this and saying to yourself, I only sell 1 or 2 or 3 deals a month. And that's okay because Rob actually talks about how even a smaller volume wholesale operation can really benefit from focusing on the disposition systems. For example, a lot of deals that Rob and his team used to pass up on, they now get under contract and sell because they have more qualified buyers on the back end. Deals that might have been a little too skinny and didn't have enough profit in them, they now buy because they know they're going to be able to sell them. Even if it's only for $3,000, $4,000, $5,000, $6,000, they can now make those deals work because they have the buyers lined up on the back end. If you're new to this channel, make sure that you subscribe and hit the bell icon below so you get notified every time we release a new video just like this. And with that said, let's get into today's video.
What's up? What's up? Thanks for having me out. This is really exciting. This is something that we relaxed on for a long time, and it's becoming a much, much bigger deal, and something we put a lot of emphasis and a lot of effort into, kind of as Josh mentioned. It's something that REI Black Book's had forever, but it's something that we really wanted to kind of work closely with them and build out, because I couldn't really find anyone else that was doing it, and I couldn't, and even further into that, there's not really that many folks that are putting that much emphasis on it. So I think there's a ton of opportunity. I think it's a spot where folks can get really, really lazy, which means it's a even larger opportunity for everyone watching. So I'm going to dig into this for you guys that don't know me. I'm going to get this set up. Kind of the purpose of the presentations, what the main kind of section here is, and we're going to start that off just by telling you a little bit about me. So as Josh mentioned, I own Core Properties, my business partner John Rankin, and we're also involved in a lot of other things that I'll get into here in just a minute. Live in St. Louis here, and our main business is in St. Louis. Married to Michelle there, and have 2 daughters, Henley and Addison, 5 and 8, who kind of keep me on my toes. And then, one thing that's always really, really important to me whenever I go to, in normal times, I go to kind of national seminars and talk to folks that are doing big things around the country, or kind of in these times, we kind of dig through it and do it on, webinars, Zoom, Vimeo, whatever it might be, is like, who's telling me about this process and system, and what are they really doing? So Josh mentioned a little bit about kind of our deal volume on the wholesale side. So I'll get into that, and then kind of some of our other operations, and a little bit of backstory about what we got going on. So why listen to me? Like, who am I, and who am I to tell you what to do with the dispo, or kind of what best practices are? So here it is. So on wholesaling, we did right around 200 deals last year. During COVID, we had a couple down months and then really picked it up. I'm going to dig into that in detail on kind of the origin and how the dispo side really hit scale. But in this year, 2021 here, we're looking at doing 300 plus deals. Like I mentioned, 102 contracts in the first quarter, and we're not slowing down. So very likely could be, upwards of 400 deals in 2021. But time will tell here on that. We also have a large residential rental portfolio. We own a good amount of single family and multifamily properties, as well as a big avenue that we're pushing at really hard is commercial rentals. We own about 160,000 square feet of commercial space that we own and manage, mostly throughout St. Louis. But we're looking at some other markets now as we're kind of scaling up and some opportunity kind of presents itself. Those are two on the left-hand side of the presentation there. Those are two of the commercial properties we own that we bought over the last 5 or 6 years here that we own and manage. Also have a real estate brokerage team in town here that does about $60 million in volume, plus or minus. This year might actually exceed that. And then also we do some of our commercial leasing through the brokerage as well. We purchased quite a few notes, distressed notes from banks, another avenue that we work through, hard money lending. I'm going to talk about that in detail about some of the kind of cool pieces is when you have a strong disposition team that you can bolt on some other businesses such as hard money lending, or even if you've got the right licensing, you can broker the hard money lending to other lenders. As well as a senior living company that we processed about 250 plus seniors over the last 18 to 24 months. And that side of the business is growing as well. All of this is built around our wholesale engine. So just a little bit about me. Been in business for 10 plus years. Very, very tied into the real estate market and obviously doing this full time. The one thing I am not is a public speaker, so please bear with me as we kind of go through this. I think about it from the operator's role, from the business owner's role. So hopefully I can keep you guys engaged and make it exciting. But like I said, not a public speaker, real estate investor. That's me. So, all right, guys, this is really, really cool. So overall, it's super easy, right? Step one, where you at? You're probably just bad at dispo. Majority of folks right now are, whether you don't really have anything or, you're just kind of throwing stuff out on MailChimp and making a couple calls. Well, step two, we're gonna get good at dispo. That's it, right? And end of the day. So be bad at it and get better. Here's where we're at. All right, so why are you here? Kind of why are you here in this process? And the reoccurring theme is that it's always important to be great at the disposition side of the business, and it's always the last thing that people focus on. Everyone wants to get the leads, they want to get the property under contract to purchase, and then after all of that, they kind of like back end the dispo. And for anyone out there that's doing a fair amount of deals, if you're only doing one deal a month or one deal every other month or somewhere in that ballpark, you're still kind of focusing on the dispo, but you don't have a big buyers list. You don't have reoccurring clients that are really coming in because you're only doing, one deal or one deal every other month or one deal every month. So what you realize is the focus is never really on this side, but now more than ever, it should be. How do we always win in a seller's market? That's going to be the reoccurring theme today. And really over the next couple of years, right? It's a seller's market. So if we just go to retail real estate side real quick, right? In a seller's market, the seller controls the sale, right? Now it's really hard for agents to get listings because inventory is so low. Now the seller has the right to price their house at whatever it is. It sells for over market, multiple contracts. People are removing contingencies and financing and appraisals, all of that stuff because the seller controls it. Well, on the investment side, it's kind of the same way, right? The only benefit is that we're in the business of finding off-market deals. Great. But the seller still kind of controls the cards, right? So they know that there are more buyers who want to buy their property than there are folks to sell them. And as a result, prices are going up. So one thing that we've really focused on is how do we always win in a seller's market? And the answer is we figure out how to pay the most, right? That's the overall reoccurring theme. If I have a huge buyer's list and I'm very good at dispoing the property, I can pay more on the buy side. No matter what the lease source is, no matter what the sales guy, how good the sales guy is, no matter all of that, if I can pay more, I win a majority of the time on the A to B transaction, the buy side. And how do I do that? is by having a fantastic B2C side of the business on the dispo side. So that's going to be the reoccurring theme. I'm going to mention it 100 times. Hopefully it really kind of burns and ingrains into you. But so why are you here? So you're looking to increase profitability on the deals that you get under contract, right? I mean, that's inherently kind of why people start to kind of get into the dispo side. But in reality, there's some other variables. You're needing help locating new buyers as your acquisitions are increasing. So your kind of business is growing up a little bit and you need help kind of locating new buyers and you need a way to contact them. Maybe you're seeking solutions to systemize a process you already have, in order to maximize the time and marketing of the deals the most efficient way. You want to get the deal out to folks as efficient as possible and kind of make sure you're getting marketed to the right people. And then you have the systems in place so that they're getting contacted and they're getting followed up with on the dispo side. Or this is what happens to a lot of folks, and I'm going to dig into this super, super deep, is the deals are taking too long to sell. The deals are taking too long to get uploaded into the dispo system. Most folks out there are just kind of shooting them out to a handful of people. Most people are just throwing them on MailChimp and emailing them out and hitting, 30% hit rate, and it's getting bogged down in 100 emails in your buyer's inbox. And then it's never kind of going anywhere. And you're getting this inventory backlog and then you start freaking out and worrying about getting the properties moved, and then you take your eye off the ball on the acquisition side. So we're talking about systemizing all of that and how to increase the profitability so that your backlog isn't like you're not getting backlogged on the dispo side. You're getting the efficiency of being able to sell those properties faster, right? I'm going to dig into that. I'm doing these presentations. I always want to dig into all the big points, but we're kind of hitting the upfront stuff, and then we're going to dig into some of the deeper details here. So remind me, I'm going to come back to that point on increasing, lessening that backlog and increasing cash flow and the efficiency, the velocity of that deal. So now that we talked about, kind of why you're here. Oh, there we go. Who can we benefit? So I touched on this a little bit, but as we're kind of going through this, right, there's the solopreneur. I remember those days where it's just me, or it was me and, kind of a part-time employee, or maybe you're kind of scaling up to get an assistant. But really, all the real burden comes down to you, right? You're running marketing, you're running the acquisition side, you're getting the property under contract, you're getting it to title, then you're trying to get it out to buyers, line up showings, meeting buyers out at the property, all of those variables. And it's harder and harder these days. So, you need more time to work on your business as opposed to in your business to be able to get it to the next level. But there's increasing stuff that's always just kind of coming down on you, right? So you're looking to kind of build the systems and processes, but you're spending so much time on the phone, so much time dealing with leads, so much time like trying to get folks out to look at the property, and they're dictating the schedule to go and view it. Then you got to line it up with the seller. Hopefully you got a lockbox on it, but if it's occupied, it's harder to get people in there. So all of that and kind of just, making sure people show up on time. There's all of these just heavy weight when you're a solopreneur trying to get through all this. So that's one of the big things and folks that we can help the most with some of the systemizing. You're also kind of lacking the ability to get to that next step and do multiple acquisitions and handle that lead flow because it's so manual to move the properties, and there's not a set process. You're not being able to build the expectations with your buyers because you just don't have those processes in place and setting those expectations. So who else are we benefiting, right? The folks that are just starting to scale. That was kind of what I was getting at there a little bit, right? Where maybe you have an acquisition person and you're trying to run it from a little bit higher. Maybe you have a marketing person and they're kind of helping kind of do it. And you're starting to get more deals coming in the door, and then the logjam starts to happen. You start having that single point of failure because most folks hand off the dispo last, which is probably the right move, right? They have acquisition folks out there buying properties, but the owner is still handling the dispo, and that's good and bad, right? Because it keeps you really tied to the deals. It keeps you really tied to the buyers. Your buyer pool your top 5 or 10 guys or folks are reaching out to you, and they're texting you and saying, hey, what's going on? You got any deals? And so when you get a deal, or when you think you're getting close to a deal, you call 2 or 3 folks and you kind of work through it and talk about the terms, and then you end up probably underpricing it or giving it to them because you're too bogged down on everything else. You don't have that system, that process. You've got the leads kind of flowing in, and this is probably a situation that everyone can relate to. But maybe you've got a 7 to 10 day due diligence period on a deal that you have under contract, an acquisition, and time goes by and you get a call and you're dealing with title issues and you get another deal that comes in, and it's like day 3 or 4 before you actually get the property sent out to your buyer's list. Well, that just cut. If you had a 10-day due diligence period and you don't get it out to your buyer's list until day 4, well, that just cut 40% of your marketing time out, right? So you send it out to your folks. If you have a huge buyer's list that doesn't get touched and doesn't get warmed up actively, it's just going to the junk folder anyway. Or if you have a small buyer's list, you have your 6 to 10 kind of top buyers you send it out to. They kind of put mokey-doke around. They know you really well. They hope that they're going to give them last look. They're going to say, hey, we're kind of interested. We're running numbers. 2 or 3 or 4 more days go by. And then now you're on day 8 and you don't have anything in hand and you don't have the ability to push price. And they get back to you and their number's below what you're into the deal for, right? So now you only have a day or 2 of due diligence period to talk to other buyers or to get it out to more folks or to go back and renegotiate the deal with the seller, and you're getting stretched on the terms of the contract in the closing period. So now your buyer's in the driver's seat as a result of all of that. So not only are you not getting the efficiency and the velocity of turning those deals faster, but your buyer's now in the driver's seat on that, and you're accepting probably a lower price. You're not probably getting multiple offers, So that's some of the things that we're going to talk about here too. But if this relates, let me know. I remember these days very, very fondly, very vividly. It was not a good time. And then, so we've got kind of 2 different groups on the large operators, right? So the large operators are starting to kind of get out there and they're doing more and more deals. They're doing 3, 4, 5, 8 deals, 10 deals a month, right? Kind of really starting to get up to scale, but they're kind of getting the cracks in the ship, right? The hull's starting to get fractures. You're starting to kind of feel that pain. Things are everything that seemed like it worked really well when you're doing 3 or 4 deals a month is now starting to break when you're doing more deals. And you're starting to see your pipeline get kind of bottlenecked. You're starting to see it slow down. Properties aren't going out. We track weekly on like a level 10 scorecard, how many contracts are coming in, how many deals are actually kind of making it through title, making it to the finish line to be an accepted contract that we're ready to go with versus the amount of properties that are selling each week, right? So if the amount of deals that we're bringing in is increasing faster than the amount of deals that we're selling out, then there's an issue, right? Because those deals that are approved, if you got 5 deals approved a month or a week, and only 3 are getting sold, 2 are sitting on your pipeline and they have to move. And if every week that occurs, now your pipeline's getting bigger and bigger. And you're going to run out of time if you're trying to simultaneous wholesale them, or if you have the money to actually take them down, then you're going to start running out of money because you're going to have a big pool of assets that aren't getting moved. So just kind of depending on where you are on the large operator scale. But so then you're going to be forced to kind of turn on and off acquisitions and disposition mode. You're kind of bouncing back and forth, and you're kind of really starting to feel the breaks in the efficiency. Also, you're going to be passing on deals due to the inability to move the existing inventory, right? Like if you're starting to feel the pain of a big pipeline of deals that haven't moved yet, then you're going to be less likely to be able to move and jump into the next deal. And you're going to have the inefficiency or the stress of not having the cash flow of those deals kind of in your account. The other side, what we really see, and this is what I was talking about initially, like how many big operators underestimate the value of dispo. I'm in 2 big national mastermind groups. One is is Ken Clothier's group, the Billionaire Boardroom, and the other one is Super Group. And then I run with a lot of folks that are in Collective Genius and a couple other these big mastermind groups. And I'm constantly shocked at how few of them actually put an emphasis on the disposition side. And for any big operators that are out, listening to this or watching this, it's really unique because what happens is a deal that has big profit, you're more likely to sell for below what you can get. Like if you get a deal that has a 40K pop, you're more than likely going to give a better deal to that buyer versus trying to make them work for highest and best. While if you've got a skinny deal that is, a 5, 6, 7K pop, you're working for every nickel, right? You're trying to squeeze an extra $1,000 or $500 out of your buyer, and you're scratching and pulling. But most investors don't take that same amount of concentration, that same amount of fire and effort. They don't apply it to the high profitability deals. So they don't get that additional bump. Like if you're fighting for an extra $2,000, $3,000 on the skinny deals, why wouldn't you also do it on the big deals? Because if there's more profit there, if there's more money to be made on both parties because it's such a good deal, you might as well work it the same way because you're giving up the same $2,000 one way or another. So, when you focus on the disposition side, and you focus on the kind of the refinement of the disposition leads, you got fewer canceled contracts. So you've already worked through all of the pieces of the deal, right? You spent the money on marketing, you bought the list, you sent out the mailers, or you did the cold calling or the texting, or a web lead came in or a Facebook lead came in, right? You ran it through your lead manager. Maybe that's you, but in these larger groups, you got a lead manager. You then have your acquisition teams go out, meet with the seller, analyze the property, get photos, write up a contract, write up an offer, give it to them, get it approved, bring it back, get it to title, upload it into your dispo system, or get it out to folks just to have the deal die on the 1 yard line. You ran the ball all the way down the field, and then you didn't come away with any points. You didn't get a field goal. You didn't get a touchdown. You didn't get anything. You're just giving it up on the 1 yard line for the other team to kind of run with it. So that's a huge, huge loss. So as you're kind of building this up, if you don't have the disposition team built up, you're going to give away more contracts. So one of the biggest benefits is you do less of that. The other benefit, like I was mentioning earlier, we want multiple offers on every contract. I don't care if it's a skinny deal that's only worth $5,000 to $6,000, $7,000, or if it's a deal that's a $50,000 pop. We want to get it out to the broadest group of qualified buyers to make sure that we're maximizing the profit on each one of those. If I can make an extra $2,000 on 300 contracts this year, that is a huge, huge number. Josh, what's the math on that? What's 2,000 times 300? That 200,000, 600,000? That's $600,000 that would go to the bottom line at that scale, right? If you're doing 100 deals a year, that's $200,000. 50 deals a year is 100,000. So you kind of do that math. So just by building up a system, actively managing it, and running it the right way, you can vastly increase your profitability on every single deal that'll make this thing, make building out that system worth it tenfold. And then the other piece is when you're actively managing the disposition process and you're actively bringing in new buyers, warming them up, understanding what they want, understanding little pockets of the market that are changing, which is super, super important right now, you're going to be able to make money on deals that you otherwise wouldn't have been able to do at all. I got a great example here in just a second about a meds deal, but I'm going to hit on that. But I think it's key to also realize that the disposition department is kind of an active group that's always changing. We must continually be finding new buyers. There's always going to be new buyers and different buyers. So if I think back, like during COVID was a prime example. So it is mid-May right now, May 13th, I think, right? May 13th, 2021 right now, right? But a year ago, a year and a month, right? It's April. COVID just comes into effect, and financing goes out the window, right? Hard money lending is almost non-existent. Everyone kind of dries up. They think we're bouncing back to a 2008 recession. Everyone's freaking out. Also, most investors that had the cash that didn't need hard money lending, they are looking at it like, well, why am I going to buy deals right now? I might as well wait a little bit because I think I'm going to get a better deal. I need to know where the market's going to bottom before I'm going to buy a bunch of properties. So if I've got the cash, I'm going to back out of these contracts, or I'm going to do what I can not to close on these deals, sit back on my heels and just wait a minute and then jump in and best utilize my cash. So in an ever-changing market like that, we were forced to go out and find new buyers in real time. Like, who is actually buying, who actually has access to cash, who can close on a deal, and what are they now looking for? Well, if you've got a really, really strong disposition team and a really, really strong disposition process, well, then now you can just get on the phone and contact all those folks and say, hey, what are you looking for? What's changed since COVID? Do you still have access to capital? Because you might find out that all the buyers that you had in one specific area aren't buying right now, and only the buyers that are buying in this other area are buying right now. And that's what we ran into, right? The higher end price points in our market kind of slowed down substantially in April and May, but the Section 8 rental market really jumped up. There were multiple private equity funds that came into St. Louis, that came in all around the country, and they were saying, okay, well, if all of real estate values are going to be dropping and renters can't pay, the government will keep paying. So we found that out really quickly, that Section 8 buyers were buying at a high level. So what did we do based on the strength of our dispo team and the strength of our dispo marketing and reaching out to folks and understanding it and seeing who new was coming into town? We were able to adjust our front end marketing on the buy side to pull away from this whole area where folks weren't buying because we didn't have buyers right now, and focus it all on the areas where folks were buying. And it allowed us that in April and May were actually two of the most profitable months we made last year because, well, actually it was May and June because we bought them in April and May. But we put them under contract in April and May, and then we sold them in May and June. But because no one else was buying, everyone else dried up because they had their tail between their legs. They didn't know what to do. We were able to quickly pivot, adjust, understand what was going on in real time, and make that move. And it would not have been possible without kind of some of the stuff I'm going to be talking about today. So, and that was a pretty good example of actively watching your disposition, actively managing that department, seeing what changes are kind of continuously going on, understanding what sales prices are doing, what rents are doing, when new little pockets of the market are popping up and you're seeing values kind of spike up, you're seeing new buyers go into areas. And this goes into the example. I was just talking to one of our acquisition guys last Friday, and I was just saying, hey, how's it going? He's like, man, I'm working some really unique deals, some deals that I didn't think would work. I didn't think I'd be able to pay more than about $20,000 on a deal, and because I needed to be able to sell it for about 25 to 27. 20 was the most I could pay. They owed 19. It was just getting super skinny. So it was going to be a skinny deal anyway, but there's just not much market for that spot. And then, so what he did was he's analyzing it, trying to find out with comps and doing everything. And he knew this area pretty well just from deals, but hadn't really looked at it in the last 3 to 4 months. So he went down to our dispo department, talked to Nick, talked to Connor, talked to some other folks, and kind of dug through some of the details. And we found out that there was actually two new buyers that were buying in that area, and they were pushing prices up. And it was happening in real time. It just happened in the last 2 to 3 months. And we found out that what we thought we had to sell for 25 and what we would have had to sell for 25,000 3 or 4 or 5 months ago, we can now sell for 60. So we ended up buying that deal for $20,000, sold it for 60 for a $40,000 pop. A deal that might not have been able to get done, or we might have kind of been like, okay, well, I'm not sure we can make that $4,000 or $5,000. It's pretty skinny. I'm not sure we're going to do it. So this is a prime example of using this part of the process, really understanding the dispo side to find these new pockets as they're popping up in real time, being the first mover. And for large operators, guess what the next thing that we did? We went back in our CRM and said, what deals have we passed on, or what deals could we not make work in this pocket in the past that now we can? And that's what we immediately jumped on and started hitting the phones and calling past folks that hadn't sold that we now can buy at even the price they were asking before and make huge spreads because those new buyers push the market up that fast. And I promise you, if it's happening in St. Louis, it is absolutely happening around the country. You sure as hell know it's happening in Indy, and I'm talking more Midwest, but Indy, Nashville, Columbus, Memphis, Atlanta, Louisville, then it's happening down south and all those hot markets in Florida and Texas and on the West Coast as well. West Coast, we're not talking about 20 and 60, we're probably talking about 200 and 600 or even more. So this is a really, really big piece that's underestimated, and this is a key kind of variable that is hitting all different size investors and no one's really focusing on, and I'm glad we're talking about it because I think there's just huge opportunity to sneak in no matter what your size is and absolutely capitalize on this. This is probably more important than new lead sources, new acquisition styles, more important than virtual wholesaling, all the stuff that people are talking about. Now, all that's important, but when you have this big, strong dispo team, this like very valuable asset, all of those other things that I mentioned are substantially more valuable. So that was a pretty good little overview about kind of how we can help, who we can help, and some of the specifics. Kind of from there, we're going to kind of talk about how it really came to fruition when we started working on it and kind of some of the initial values that we saw kind of going into that, jumping into the next section. But I think we're going to pop into questions here before we jump into that new section. Is that right, Josh?
Hey, I hope you're enjoying this video with Rob Hyder. And if you want to test out the same tools that Rob uses to market all of his properties, click the link below and sign up for a free trial of REI Blackbook. When you do that, you'll be able to upload all of your current properties that you have for sale. You'll be able to build a cash buyer website where you can market all of your current properties. And you'll also be able to build a buyer's list and segment that buyer's list so you know who in your market is looking to buy what type of properties. This is going to allow you to sell more of your deals faster for higher profit. So if you're ready to get started with REI Blackbook, click the link below this video, sign up for a free trial, and get started today.
All right, so the origin of the dispo, right? So why did we decide to invest in it? The original reason we invested in disposition and kind of some of the value that we got out of it, some of the details. So like I mentioned, we realized that there was a lot of money being left on the table on this side, and more so the stress of putting so much effort on the acquisition side and not having a ton of comfort that the deals were moving out equally as fast on the dispo side. So that was a big piece. Also, we were very often, you got some questions? Oh, sorry. We were very often realizing that we were just kind of selling deals to folks that we knew, or if it was a big pop or one that was a little bit of a create. Oh, we got a question? Cool, let's do it.
So how do you find buyers and warm up to them?
How do you find buyers and what?
And warm up to them.
Warm up to them. So I'm going to get into some of those details and what's that? Oh, I'm going to get some of that question in great detail, but I'll touch on it really quickly. So we use a few different systems to find the data initially. We use something called Buyer Sonar, but I can give you guys the contact information at the end here. And then we use REWW, so Real Estate Worldwide's Find Cash Buyers software to get it. Also, you can get that data from your county's real estate office, that do real estate tax information since the county. And then if you have MLS or RMLS access, you can also get buyer data that way. Then depending on what source you use or multiple sources, you can then always just skip trace the data to get to the folks. And then we just call them up from our office. Some folks will use a VA to kind of do it, but generally if they're a larger reputable buyer, you probably want to classify the different buyers in kind of an A, B, C, D list. Like if folks are only buying a couple properties a year or, a couple a quarter, depending on what their use is, you can probably have a junior person on your team or a VA kind of call those folks initially, warm them up, go through a list of questions and just tell them a little bit about what you do and how you can help them. But on the A and B kind of buyers, the folks that are buying at scale, the folks that are paying the most and like probably need a warm introduction, then I would call them directly yourself or one of the more senior folks kind of on your team to just kind of tell them what you do, how you can help them, and get an understanding of what they're looking for, and kind of go through your general cash buyer kind of questionnaire of area, asset type, price point, use of the property, rehab, rental, finance, whatever it might be, and then quantity of deals they're buying and so on and so forth. You should have a good amount of that data based on the research that you're doing because you should be able to see how many properties they own, how many they bought, how many they sold through some of those data sources I'm going to talk to. But more times than not, if you just call them and talk to them, in a standard kind of sophisticated way and not just kind of pawn off the A and B buyers to a VA, you should be able to warm up to them pretty easily, especially if you're able to add them value and you can talk the talk. Any other questions before I jump? Cool, let's do it. All right, so originally, why we invested in Dispo, we needed just a system and a process to get better at it. We were doing it probably like everybody else has been doing it forever. It seems like we're at that point where there's kind of a disruption in the market. Everyone's just doing it kind of like they always have. They're using MailChimp or maybe even something a little bit more sophisticated like Constant Contact to get the properties out. They're probably just emailing them out. They're not doing any kind of follow-up text or phone calls to discuss the deals with the top buyers. They're not going through that extra step. They're also not pre-qualifying the buyers and having constant communication, seeing what's changed with them. So with that, we realized we were leaving a ton of money on the table by not making that step. And we were realizing that we were not having the ability to develop new buyers on an ongoing basis. We would just kind of get comfortable with who we had and we weren't constantly, kind of recruiting new folks, seeing who was paying the most, seeing who was looking for unique asset types or who was buying in areas that we weren't otherwise looking or otherwise doing deals, right? And then the example I gave before was the ability to find and develop new buyers during COVID, right? That was a big piece. So we had been building out the disposition side for probably at least 18 months, probably 2 years or more prior to COVID hitting. But what really came through was during COVID and needing to make that shift. Having the groundwork already in place was a huge stepping stone because we could just go through and say, hey, who has bought properties from us in the last 2 years? Who is constantly reaching out to us and saying, we're looking for deals? And who do we know that, in the first quarter of 2020 is buying property? Like who bought something in the first quarter, hopefully more than one deal, and then real time monitoring who's continually buying property. Who bought properties from, mid-March through mid-May? That data is about 30 days back. So I say real time, but as real time as it can be. So you couldn't see who was buying in mid-May until mid-June, give or take, but pretty darn close. And then if you can see in mid-June who was buying between mid-March and mid-May, kind of the first 2 months of COVID, well, that is a very, very good group to contact. So that was a huge piece. We needed to know who is now buying, who is still buying that we're not already talking to. Because we're calling all of our buyers and we're going through and tracking who's kind of buying other stuff. But on some of these other softwares, we're able to see who is buying, who is newly buying that wasn't buying before, and able to touch base with them and see what they're looking for. And that was the example I said earlier. We adjusted our front end marketing based on the new buyers that were kind of up and coming and doing more deals as a result of COVID. And then we really realized the value of having a more diversified buyers list during COVID as well. So the pandemic was a big eye opener because, you know, if you've got 20, 30, 40 VIP buyers, which sounds like a big VIP buyer list, but in general, just in theory, we'll call them VIP buyers and A-list buyers, right? You know, and more than half of them kind of put the brakes on because they're nervous about the market, you know, or maybe they're a VIP buyer, but even still, they needed hard money or private money, and their lender put the brakes on them. If they wanted to buy and they couldn't, it didn't really matter. So that was a huge piece, and you know, it was really, really important not to get too dependent on your top few buyers. So that's kind of my point, right, with the diversification. And what we found was there were obviously certain funds that were really ramping up their buying during this, and then the folks that really kind of tailed off and weren't doing anything. So we were able to make that adjustment, like I mentioned. But I think it was really, really key to see that and know that we're making those adjustments now for whatever in the heck happens in the future. And so we started doing it just because we were breaking our system. We were, you know, one of those groups that I mentioned early on in this presentation that, you know, their systems were starting to break and they needed to add more scale to it. But you know, we needed to kind of make some changes. And then COVID really put it on you know, super pilot. One of the things that we kind of did with this, and we're able to kind of focus on is like, okay, well, what if we can take all of the properties that we've purchased over the last whatever time frame, 6 months, 12 months, we can upload them all into the map and then drop the pins on whatever date range that we want. But what if we could see all of those buyers and then classify them on a color-coded basis based on the profitability of those buyers, or, you know, what deals were the most profitable? So we can see what areas are producing the most versus areas that aren't. So that was another thing that really kind of came out of this. So we started kind of looking at it in this manner based on just trying to figure out who was still buying and which of the buyers were buying, and then what was the profitability of the deals we were selling to those buyers. But then we started looking at on all of the deals. And then even deeper than that, we're able to upload a new data set, buyers that are now buying that we hadn't sold anything to, and kind of overlay that on the map, right? And kind of analyze which areas do we need to be really, really focusing on in bulk, and then which areas like aren't producing the profitability and there are less new buyers coming in that area, so that we can shut off the tap on the marketing in those channels and reallocate. And then, like I said, this is kind of happening in real time. So this is a really, really big variable. We just use Google Maps as a free service and just plot all the points. Really easy to do. But when you kind of go through this, you start realizing, okay, well, what areas are producing the greatest amount of profit? What areas are the most new buyers coming in, and adjust your marketing? That's step one. Step two is once a lead comes in and then it converts to an appointment, and you're going on that appointment, if you can drop in the address of the property you're going to look at, and you can see what new buyers are buying, like new buyers are buying in that area, what new buyers are paying, and what your past buyers had paid, well, now you have so much more data going into that appointment to know exactly where you need to be so that you can always win that deal, right? You want to get that property for the best price that you can on the acquisition side, but you know how high you can go almost to the penny based on what it's going to sell for. So a lot of folks talk about reverse wholesaling. This is a kind of a offshoot of that, and it really works well in a visual kind of a visual way. So you can really, really see, okay, well, I'm dropping this data point here. I've got 6 data points right around it that are profitable, and I got 2 new data points or 2 new pins on the map from a new buyer that we never sold to before. Okay, 1, we need to make sure that we're reaching out to that new buyer, and then 2, we know about what our price point can be on the purchase side. This was kind of a revolutionary change for us that we kind of started building out pre-COVID, but it really, really came into high value post-COVID. So one of the things we're kind of building into this. And then kind of understanding your buyers and their strategies. This kind of goes to the question that was asked a few minutes ago, but the larger, more active buyers have more market knowledge than other folks, right? The hedge funds, the private equity groups, the large scale buyers, the folks that own 500 plus units that are buying for rentals, they have more knowledge and they have much quicker feedback and they have better access to capital. So talking to those groups and understanding kind of what changes they're making will allow us to know what changes we need to be making on the acquisition side. So these are some of the additional pieces that some of the smartest groups in the room are looking at, right? And it allows us to see different exit strategies and the business models that allow groups to buy more and buy on different margins, right? Because as anyone that's actually out there wholesaling deals, they know selling to a rehabber typically produces a little bit less margin than selling to a rental buyer because they're buying at a different, say, formula on Mayo, right? A rental buyer can pay a greater percentage of ARV than a rehab buyer can, because the rehab buyer needs to bake in the profit. They have to pay commissions. They have to pay closing costs. So all that has to get in. They're putting more improvements into the property, while a rental buyer, they just want to bake in that equity. So if you're giving away 8 to 10% on the sell side of a rehab for commissions and closing costs, well then that 8% can be baked in, increase your percentage of Mayo. So if your rehab buyers are buying at a 70% Mayo calculation, then the rental buyers should be able to buy at a 78% Mayo calculation. And I realize that's kind of changing right now because the seller's market and prices are kind of shooting up. So the Mayo calculation percentages are going up. But nevertheless, there's that percentage gap between them from a rental buyer versus a rehab buyer. That is kind of playing a role, right? So, but understanding these different exit strategies for your buyers makes all the difference in the world when it comes to getting the most margin on a deal and knowing how to market the deal to somebody. Because, for example, in St. Louis here, in North County, Florissant area, that was a high rental area forever. For all the hedge funds were there buying, like back in 2010, 11, 12. Blackstone was there buying for rental portfolio before selling it off. Main Street's there. All the big hedge funds are buying in that area. You can get a 3-bed, 2-bath ranch house with a garage for, a reasonable price. And, you maybe be all in for $60,000 or $70,000 back then and it'd rent for $1,000 to $1,100. The numbers were great, right? You're blowing the 1% rule out of the water. Well, now, people are still buying for rental in that area, but the prices are, 100 to 110, 120. But now the retail market is back, right? So now you also have the rental buyers and you have the retail buyers. And the retail market's probably closer to about 160,000 for that house right now, 150. So you've got different exit strategies. So now you have to evaluate based on the improvements and what's going on with rental rates, who's the best person to sell it to get the most margin. And if you know that you get a greater percentage of Mayo on a rental buyer and if the property needs a lot less work, then maybe you go that route versus a rehab buyer who needs to get it totally updated. They need to pay commissions on the backside. They need to pay closing costs, all the different variables. So that's a big, big piece as it comes to evaluating your dispo and your buyer's criteria. And then the biggest thing is getting that buy box and really understanding the buy box. And it really allows you to push price and sell the properties at a premium to the right buyer. Because if you're sending your properties that you're dispoing to your entire buyer's list, independent of what they want all the time, they're going to get calloused, right? If you are an end buyer, you are a rental buyer and you want to buy rental properties for $150,000 and less that hit the 1% rule on rental basis and are in these 5 zip codes over here. That's what you're looking for. Properties are $150,000 and less, 1% rule on the rentals, and are in these 5 or 6 zip codes. Well, if you're that buyer, and so wholesaler keeps sending you deals for $350,000 houses for full rehab on the other side of town, you're going to stop paying attention to their emails because everyone's busy. And when you actually get the deal they're looking for, they're not going to be looking at it because they're going to be callous. They're going to be worn out from seeing all the deals that don't fit their buy box, right? Or if you keep sending them $20,000 rentals in a Class C, Class D neighborhood, and they're looking for Class B at $150,000, they're going to stop looking at the emails you send. So when you send them the right one, they're not going to pay attention. So that's very, very important as we get into this. We want to classify our buyer groups so that we can make sure that we really understand what our buyer's buy box is, that we really understand the use of the property that maximizes our amount of profit on the sale. Like I said, rental, rehab, whatever that might be, with the buy box of the buyers, and only send that property out to the groups that's most that's most applicable to buy the property, so that you don't wear out your buyers list. And you want to constantly be touching those key buyers to make sure that that buy box isn't changing, because it'll change over time, right? So this is all fluid and it's all real time. But if you've got a system so that, you know, John Smith buys the $150,000 rentals, just touch them every 2 to 3, 4, 5 months just to make sure that's still the case, or if there's anything changed, especially in a market like this where everything's kind of out of whack. He might say, hey, yeah, rentals are great, and I was buying rentals, but I don't know where the market's going. I don't want to be in long-term holds right now. I'd rather just do rehab and sells, or rehab and flips, sell retail, and I'm going to be buying in that $220,000 price point. Here's a couple new zip codes I'm looking for. You know, once I get a better understanding of what's going on in the economy, what's going on in the market, then I'm going to bounce back to my rental portfolio. So just be touching those folks and always kind of be talking to them and make sure you're getting them the deals and you're not wearing out your buyers. That's a big, big, big piece to this strategy. And something big that we kind of figured out through this. So then here's some of the unexpected results that really kind of came. You know, we were able to get deals done that we previously would not have been able to do. This was huge. Like, there were areas that we're now able to get deals done at higher margins than our average margin that we wouldn't have been buying in 18 months ago, which is wild, right? A great example is that example of Ahmed's deal that I mentioned earlier, where we thought that the most an investor buyer was going to pay was $25,000, maybe $27,000, right? And then it turned out that over a 2 or 3 month period, that market had changed entirely, and we were able to sell that deal to a new fund that came in town for $60,000. The profitability on that and actively touching the dispo side was so monumental on that one deal alone, and then saying, okay, what other deals are in our CRM that we didn't think that we could sell for more than $25,000 in that little pocket that we need to be talking to now, because pretty soon everyone's going to find out who that buyer is, but we're on the front end of it because we're in that real-time data gap. You know, the deal velocity is the other piece here. This is a very, very big one. You might have heard the term. Sean Terry talked about it, sort of really talking about it about 2.5 years ago, but I haven't heard that many folks kind of talk about it, but it's really important, right? So can we get closings done quicker given the strong buyer demand? So if we had a 30-day close on a deal, on an acquisition, to the A to B side, we had a 30-day close. Day one, it gets put into our CRM, gets out to the title company's pulling title, we get, okay, the clear to go. Day two, we send it out to our buyers list. We define the very clear message. We know who the buyer is. We know all the stuff. We determine the best listing of buyers for that property, and we send it out to our buyers list. We get multiple offers day 3. Perfect. Okay, cool. Now we want to push those buyers to close sooner than that 30-day time frame. So if we got it under contract on the 1st and we try to sell them in the closing dates the 30th, if we can get a buyer to close 10 days, now we're closing, say, on the 15th of the month. Now we call our seller, the current homeowner, and try and get their closing moved up to the 15th. Got it? So now instead of closing on May 30th, we're closing on May 15th on both sides. So that means on May 15th, we get that check. Let's say it's a $15,000 wholesale fee. Great. We were going to get it on May 30th. Now we're getting it on May 15th. Well, guess what happens now? A portion of that profit can now go into the marketing budget. And now we can implement that marketing 2 weeks faster, which brings in more leads, which brings in more appointments, which allows us to feed the engine that much faster. So very likely, before the 30th, when that deal was originally supposed to close, we'll already have another deal locked up with the profit from the original deal because of the velocity of that turn. So over a short window, you should be able to increase your deal flow by about 20 to 30% just by focusing on the velocity of the turn. It's something that was talked about a little bit, but it hasn't been discussed in that much detail. And the piece that everyone was missing in relation to the velocity was having a very, very strong dispo side. Because without that, you can't force the velocity. You're kind of just subject to what the market's going to give you. And in this instance, we want to take control of that. All right, so we also realized that reverse wholesaling became a bigger opportunity. So this kind of goes back to the map that I was talking about and kind of the first bullet point there, right? The ability to get deals done that we didn't know otherwise. So if we know that buyers are migrating to a specific area and are paying more in a specific area, well, guess what? Now we know what the buyers are looking for. We know their buy box. We know the quantity of deals they're looking to buy. We're in constant contact with them. They trust us because we're talking to them a bunch. We're warming them up, like the gentleman or the person that asked the question earlier. We're warming up those buyers. Well, now we can turn our marketing engine in that exact area, knowing that we've got the buyers in hand. So what does that allow us to do? It allows us to buy deals we wouldn't have otherwise been able to. It allows us to pay more for deals. In a seller's market, it allows us to pay more, which means we win more deals, and we can do it all day because we know who's paying the most on the backside. And as more folks are buying in a specific area, it also pushes up retail price. So then now we've got a whole new buyer pool that will be following that original move. It'll be following it with about 3 to 5 month lag on the retail side shortly after. So it's going to continue to push prices up once that starts to move. It allows us to expand our buy area. It allowed us to go to other municipalities or other counties that we weren't looking at otherwise, because as we started researching it and getting a better understanding of buyers and where they were going, it allowed us to keep widening our net so that we were able to see kind of see where the buyers are going and allow us to go back into the CRM again and find deals that we might have passed on before. Or say, hey, wow, there's a lot of buyers that are buying in this pocket that's just a little bit further out, and there aren't really that many wholesalers looking over there. So guess what? Profit spreads are greater because there's less buyers to the end home user or to the beginning home user. There's less buyers out there buying, but there are investors that want them. You're gonna get better deals because you have less competition. And then we kind of knock through some of these other ones. Where the market is right now, realtors, hold on, let me back up on this one. This is a very, very big point. So generally speaking, most realtors don't understand or love what wholesalers do. Some get it and some love it, but a majority of them, it's kind of oil and water a little bit, right? Now, where the market is, hotter than hell, 1 month of inventory, everything's selling above ask, realtors can't find enough properties to sell. Guess what? We find off-market deals. They don't know how to. So now they're your best friend. Now they really want to talk to you. They want to see what you have that can get to their realtor clients, their buyers, before anybody else. And their realtor clients can't find any properties online, and they're willing to do the work now because there's no other inventory. So now you can take a deal that you might have otherwise wholesaled to an investor and double the profit margin because you're selling to the direct user through an agent. So it's an amazing avenue to kind of get out to and kind of talk to folks. Now, Josh is going to talk to you guys about this later today, but you want to segregate that buyer pool of realtors in a separate classification in REI Black Book, because you don't want to send out every property that you'd be sending out to investors to realtors as well, because it slows down the process. You have to determine which ones make the most sense and kind of send those deals out to the realtors as a pocket off-market deal before you send it out to investors, because you want to know what the realtor is going to do before you send it out to investors, so you don't piss off all your A buyers and VIP buyers. Hope that makes sense. I'll dig into that in more detail here in just a little bit. I'll probably whiteboard it, but just kind of something there. And that goes into the next one here. Realtor referrals and retail buyers, they're kind of connected, right? Only difference is the realtor's telling you what their buyers want and they're playing the middleman, versus if you're capitalized or you have hard money lending or whatever it might be, you can take a deal that is very close to being kind of livable, buy it on a wholesale price, take the asset down under ownership, clean out the junk, maybe hit it with a little bit of paint and some landscaping and just knock the scary off of it a little bit, $2,000, $3,000, $4,000, and then throw it on the retail market yourself or with an agent that you're close to, and get multiple offers that way because there's so little inventory out there on the market. So that is a big avenue right now. It's, I think, the best avenue. I mean, it's the wholesale kind of model, but I think it's much better than rehabbing right now, where construction costs are going and where buyer demand for homes are. And then turnkey. Turnkey is awesome, especially as little pockets are going up in price, and nationally investors are getting very, very confident that inflation's coming, and they are getting very confident that rental rate growth will be a real thing. So areas that example I gave earlier, where we didn't think we could sell the property for any more than $25,000 and it sold for $60,000. Well, guess what? Because now the turnkey buyers in bulk are looking in that area, and they think they can push rent in that area, and they realize they can't buy properties the same way they were buying before. So now that model works. Now that area works, and it's going to create markets that weren't otherwise there. So unexpected result is that we started kind of turnkeying more properties, just getting them cleaned up, one step past wholesale, make them livable, get them to occupancy. In our market, we have occupancy inspections. Not all markets do. Actually, I think more don't than do. But the key is just getting it rent ready. In our market, you got to get it through municipal approval to rent the home. So getting it past occupancy inspection is that trigger point. Some turnkey buyers want a tenant in there, some don't. They prefer their management company put the tenant in there. But these were unexpected results that would have come. A lot of this would have come anyway. But we were able to get there 6 or 9 months faster. And we're still able to get there 6 or 9 months faster. And for folks that are listening, you implement some of this stuff, you'll have the same results. It's simply that you're pulling real-time data into your system. You're getting real-time, immediate feedback, a much faster feedback loop from your buyer pools. You're getting a bigger market presence. People know who you are. People want to be doing business with you because you're becoming more established. You've got other avenues to get your properties out. You're not getting bogged down with deals that aren't deals, or you're getting that information back faster that it's not a deal, so you can get it repriced and sent back to market during your due diligence period, or going back to the seller and renegotiating it so you can still get it out to market during your due diligence period. You're getting that data quick, and because the demand is so great, you're not letting your buyers, what's the right way to say this so it makes sense? You're not letting your buyers dictate the situation. You are taking control of the timeline. You're taking control of the data. They're having to adjust to you because you have the asset, and you're now the seller. It's a seller's market. You're now the seller. You control the variables. So understanding where you are in the negotiation and understanding what steps you can take to maximize the profitability is probably the biggest thing that we were trying to get to, but realizing the strength of it and where we were was the biggest unexpected result. So this is a big piece. That was a lot of stuff fast. I know I talk fast, not a public speaker. Remember, but But I think that pretty well concludes kind of how we got to where we are and some really, really good tidbits before we dig into the next section, which is the cash buyer's insight. This is kind of the section that the gentleman was asking about in that first question. So I know there's still this 25-second lag. So if you guys have any questions before we jump to the next section, now would be a great time. I know there's a lot there, so lay it on me.
Can you talk about the disposition system? Is it based on analysis of marketing data?
Yes. So the fourth, there are 4 sections, as Josh mentioned. The fourth one that I'm going to be talking about is the full disposition system, kind of how we go step by step through it. So, so that I don't kind of ruin all of that, just bear with me. And in the next hour or so, we're going to go over that in great detail. And then if anything isn't clear at that time, I'm happy to go over it in greater detail in a question. But I'd give away too much before getting to it. So.
I think the way he asked it, so he said, I'm understanding, he's asking if he's understanding correctly, the dispo system is based on analysis of marketing data. So I think what he's asking is, or what he's kind of understanding is the disposition system that you've built. I think one of the unintended consequences in a good way is that you have all of this data to refer back to now, when originally you were setting it up just to help you streamline the marketing process. But now you've got all this data to look back on.
Yeah, that's exactly right. I mean, a big piece of the dispo system is analyzing real-time data and new data and then comparing it to old stuff. Exactly. I mean, there's probably 3 or 4 main details. Obviously, having an ability to move the properties quickly and be in contact with your current buyer pool is kind of the first piece. The second piece is and that's what we're going to dig into right here, is getting constant new cash buyer insights or new cash buyer insights of changes to your existing buyer pool, right? Seeing what's changing, what new assets they're looking for, what areas they're looking for. As prices are going up, folks that are looking for $100,000 rentals that produce $1,000 to $1,100 a month in rent, they might not be able to find those $100,000 price point houses anymore. Maybe that house is now worth $130,000, but rents haven't quite adjusted yet. So they get behind that 1% rule. So they might say, hey, you know what? Until I have the confidence that 1% rule is going to come together, that rent is going to go up, I'm going to go and buy over here where I can still get my 1% rule, and then I'll revert once I know what's going on. So what happens is you're still sending that buyer deals in the area they're not buying anymore. So that kind of comes back to that real-time feedback loop. You want to know and be in constant contact with your folks to know that he's shifted over to this other area so that you can get him deals that he might not have otherwise been interested in before. So and in the past, you wouldn't have been sending this guy deals over in this other market, this other area, because you didn't want to burn him out on deals that he wasn't interested in before. You're only sending them in his sector. So it's that kind of constant touch, the sweet spot of not burning them out, but making sure they're seeing enough deals. So yeah, getting in touch with your current group and making sure the deals are going out efficiently and getting that feedback loop, understanding what's new, what's changed, new buyers or new buying areas for existing buyers, and then the actual system to process that through. So
Perfect.
that stuff doesn't fall through the cracks.
Awesome. Here's a good question from a local investor, Kent Kanabi. He's asking, what % of your deals are rentals versus rehabs, and has it changed in the last 12 months?
Deals that we're selling. I would say it has, because more times than not, for us at least, and for a lot of our buyers, like the deals that would be selling rehab are a little bit higher price point. We do deal with some buyers that rehab, sub $100,000, sub $150,000 price points, but a lot of them are a little bit higher than that, and those properties are a little bit harder to find, just because inventory is so low and folks kind of know what they have to some degree. And with construction prices going up the way they have in the last, 3 to 6 months, Some rehabbers are kind of slowing down a little bit on that front. So I would say in the last window, we have been selling more to rental buyers, and especially coming through. If I go back a year and I'm looking at just after COVID kind of hit, the rental buyer pool was absolutely the group that we were selling to then, and we adjusted very quickly. Within about 45 days, we realized, okay, well, market was just in a fear mode, and they weren't making decisions, and they weren't going and looking at rehabs quite as much, but people were still comfortable buying and doing rental properties, especially Section 8.
Yeah, and I remember last year, right when COVID hit, you guys were looking specifically for kind of newer investors that were looking to get into real estate. You know, I remember you were talking about trying to find those high net worth individuals like attorneys and doctors that were looking to maybe, pull some money out of the stock market or put some money into real estate. And It's nice having a system, to be able to pivot that quickly, having that system to be able to just, reach out to your existing buyers list, because you guys had a couple thousand people on there. And now you've got a team to help you do that, where you can reach out to your existing buyer list, but also feed new buyers in and qualify them as they come in to really know what they're looking for. So when you get a deal, who in your list, and we're going to be talking about this later this afternoon, technically how to set this up, but in your list who that deal is going to pair with. And sometimes it's just a phone call, right? It's just making a phone call. You don't have to send it out to thousands of people. That, hey, 'cause I remember I was talking to Nick last week, or maybe I was talking to you last week. You guys got a property in some kind of obscure neighborhood that you don't typically buy in, but that there was like one or two people on your buyers list that for whatever reason really like to buy rentals in that area. And that just takes a phone call to say, hey, are you still looking to buy in this area? And then you can put that property under contract with confidence, because you've got a buyer on the back end, and typically what they're going to pay, at least in with some sort of a price range, what they're going to pay, so you have the confidence to go put that property under contract.
Yeah, that's exactly it, and that works really well with that dispo map too. As long as you're dropping those pins on an ongoing basis, then when you're going to look at a deal that might not have anyone out there, like, oh well, there was someone that just bought right down the way and they're paid this, let me call them up. So yeah, that's a huge piece. And then you kind of hit the nail on the head there with understanding that the market was changing, and it's changing faster and in weird ways more now than ever. But yeah, during COVID, we realized, okay, there's a lot of folks that pulled their money out of the stock market. They didn't have any confidence, like when people going back to work, what's going to happen to all these businesses. But the high net worth folks knew that in the last recession, or the recession before that getting into real estate was a really good avenue, and there was going to be opportunities. So then we created, based on all the things we already had in place, we just created some social media campaigns, some Facebook, LinkedIn, depending on the user type that we were looking for. In this case, we're looking for high net worth, so LinkedIn works well, and kind of going after those groups and identifying like who we thought would have enough money to buy cash and didn't need debt, because debt wasn't really available. So who would be buying, and then who would be paying the most, because they don't have the sophistication of seeing that many deals, and then who can we kind of get in touch with and then start building a relationship, give them all the data. What data are they looking for to help make deals? Do they want to see a financial analysis? Do they want, do they have the ability to go into the county tax records and see what the real estate taxes were? I mean, do they need to call their insurance broker to find out what insurance is? What do they need to know about property management? Like, because they were going to be ramping up their data needs very quickly. So if we could get them a package of information that had all of that data in there and cited, well, now we could be the preferred seller to them, because it would make their buying process that much easier. So we did that all through the system that you kind of helped us create, the REI Black Book system, where we just created very simple marketing campaigns out to those groups, identified them, brought them, and then when they filled out the forms, it brought them back into REI Black Book, and then our team just called them up in real time. Hey, we saw you fill out form and you're looking at deals. How can we help? Given that we were going for high net worth folks that are now interested in buying and weren't really buying before, those are the groups that I would classify as like an A or a B group. So I'd have one of our folks in our office that really knows the ins and outs and could explain to them very clearly the information. I wasn't putting that to a VA.
All right, I hope you enjoyed that video with Rob Hyder, where he talked about the value and the benefits of building a more streamlined disposition system. And again, if you want to get your hands on the same tools that Rob uses in his business every single day, click the link below this video and sign up for a free trial of REI Black Book. And if you haven't done so yet, make sure that you subscribe to this channel and hit the bell icon so you get notified every time that we release new videos just like this. Thanks for tuning in today, and we'll see you next time.